Hey guys, today on the show, we're talking to the founder of Hoop Habits. His name is Anthony Tucker, and he was a former professional basketball player, someone who played many years overseas, and he played in the Big Ten for basketball, and he has a state championship in high school, so he knows what he's doing, right? And so what I love is learning from these people who've played at a very high level, who understand what it takes to really continue to grind. And one of the things you'll notice is when we discuss his professional career, he talks about the mindset that's required when things are out of your control. You might get cut from an organization, and how do you get the mindset to get back and try to find another fit that works for you to keep going, right, and not lose trust and faith in yourself. We'll also talk about the transition to the business world, and the biggest hiccups and transitions that happened when he was starting his training facility, which is Hoop Habits. You're going to learn more about Hoop Habits. We have all this stuff in the description below regarding this facility and what they offer their clients, which is incredible for athletes in their area. So really cool opportunity to learn from someone who's done this at a very high level and has now taken his athletic knowledge to the business world, which is really, really cool, and it's super inspiring. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode of the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. I just want to give a special shout out to everybody who's tuning in. If this is your first time listening, I always like to welcome the new listeners. We've been doing this for 8 years, and there's new listeners every week. So just thanks for tuning in. And for those who are returning, I appreciate you guys' support and everything that you guys have done to help grow this show. For those who are new and you have not heard, the show has been downloaded in 182 countries in all 50 states. We're growing it still on the YouTube side. Never really grew that until this last year and a half, 2 years, but still slowly growing over there. But on the audio side, that's where most of our listeners have come from. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. And if you happen to be on the YouTube side or you're interested in the YouTube side, hit that follow button. Let's keep growing that following on the YouTube front so we can grow that platform as well. Give a shout out to Timberline Digital Marketing for sponsoring the podcast. If you guys need any help with your marketing needs, if you're a small business, wherever you're at in the country, you can get your help here. If you need your stuff out on Google Search Console, Google Analytics, if you need your Google My Business, if you need your website done, you need a blog, you need email marketing, Timberline Digital Marketing is awesome. I appreciate working with them for all the digital marketing needs that I have. So real quick intro, man. As you guys heard in the introduction before, we're talking to a former professional basketball player, but he's the founder of Hoop Habits. We're going to be talking to him about what he's got going on over there. His name is Anthony Tucker. Anthony, thanks for joining the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Absolutely, brother. So I want to rewind the clock a little bit before we get into the Hoop Habits thing and what you got going on with that business and what getting into the whole entire approach for that. I want to talk about you as a basketball player, right? And understand who you are and why, the why behind your mission. So let's talk about you as a basketball player, Anthony. Growing up, at what point did you decide that basketball was going to be your sport of choice moving forward to the next level, so to speak?
Basketball has always been kind of my first love. I grew up playing multiple sports, kind of playing whatever was in season, between baseball, basketball, football. I loved basketball, but obviously it's one of those things where you kind of play with your friends, whatever the season is. And I was a good baseball player. I enjoyed it. But ultimately I believe it was 6th grade, I made the jump to playing basketball full time and kind of made that choice to kind of specialize in it. The opportunity to play, AAU basketball and to play it year round was, really intriguing to me and too much to pass up. So I would say that's kind of the point that I started taking it really seriously and, was kind of committed to doing it all the time.
Wow, I got you. So AAU basketball, I got to get your thoughts on that. I'm a club basketball coach. Actually just got back 2 days ago from a trip that we had down to Salt Lake City, Utah. Played some really good competition from this region in the country. And a couple of teams, like we had a team from Indiana, so out in the Midwest came over there. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on AAU? So from the time that you were competing in AAU to the era that we're in now, like I want to know your thoughts on AAU and the state of it, because I think you were kind of near the era of when I was playing ball as well in high school, because I graduated in 2006. It's, more or less the same era. And it just always seemed back then, Anthony, that there weren't so many teams. You actually had to make the team. And if you didn't make the team, you didn't play. And then now it's like, if you have the money to play, you just play. There's a ton of clubs that just have tons of teams, and they're giving opportunities for kids. But I feel like it's shifted for good or for worse. I'm just curious your thoughts, though, haven't been around it so much.
I think it's a unique space. And so I have my own AAU program. We have 13 teams. So for me, it's a space that I see value in. I think kids playing basketball is always going to be a good thing. I think one thing that we were pretty cognizant and mindful of when we were kind of establishing and creating our program was making sure that we focused more on the developmental piece and less on just trying to create and curate as many teams and roster spots as possible. And so I do agree with you. I think that's where it's changed so much, is that, when we were in high school and playing AAU and stuff, there was only a handful of teams, and it was just kind of like if you didn't make one of those teams, it was try to make that team next year. And now it's kind of like, if I don't make that team, there's, I have however many options, I can find something somewhere. And if not, like a mom or a dad or somebody will create one for us.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of where it's changed, and it's a bit unique. But like I said, I think just the opportunity for kids to play is a great thing. I think the interest in playing basketball year round has grown, and that's changed too. And so I don't ever think it's going to be a bad thing. I think that the kind of the life that it's taken on, and the fees and whatever, I think that's a different conversation that people like to have. And I think it all gets tied back to kind of the broad spectrum of just AAU basketball.
No, that's a valid point. I do like to hear, so I take pride in the fact that I coach for a program that's, that prides himself in development as well. So I enjoy that piece of it, and I love to hear that that's what you guys are doing too. Like, there is some benefit to it. And I'd actually argue that I agree with you in that sense, that kids playing basketball is not a bad thing. Like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of development too. Like, even the kids that didn't make the top teams, but they're still playing, I see them grow and develop a lot during their spring seasons and their summer seasons by doing that. So that when they get to their school season, a lot of them have improved drastically. And I think some kids need to play. They need to be able to play. That's how you can get better. You got to get some reps in there and understand game-like situations. So I would actually argue with that, argue that I agree with that. Whereas a lot of the people I hear out there in the media will just crap on it. I do think the era has shifted, but it's not always a bad thing. And like you said, there's the discussions on fees and all sorts of stuff that gets lumped into the same argument of just like the whole thing overall. Those are separate arguments to be made. It's not all a cash grab. Not everybody's out to make a buck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not a super profitable business. I think that's the thing that people look at and they don't necessarily take into account, is like they look at it and they say, oh, well, this program is charging X amount of dollars, and they're making so much money off of these kids. And I'm like, it's really hard to run an AAU program as a profitable business, because for as many player fees as you're collecting, there are a lot of expenses. And so I think that's the part that gets lost on people too, is the amount of time that it takes to run a program, the amount of logistics there are to cover and stuff. It's not like this lucrative thing for anybody, unless someone's got the secret sauce. I haven't discovered it. So
I'm glad you said that, though. I'm glad you said that, because that is like, dude, I hear it all the time. Like, it's a cash grab. It's a cash grab. That's all they're doing is a cash grab. I'm like, I think you're right, man. Like, yeah, dude, I don't know. Yeah. These tournament fees alone, it's like $600 a team in some of them. Plus, you got to pay for travel to get out there. That's just one tourney. If you're playing 5 or 6 of those a spring, like, yeah, it adds up. It adds up quite a bit, actually. So
exactly.
So Anthony, I got a question for you, man. Before we get into hoop habits and stuff, I really want to kind of dissect. You understand what it's like to play at a high level, right? You've played professionally for many years. You won state championships in high school. You played at the collegiate level. I guess my question for you first is, in high school, you're used to winning. You're on a winning program, state championships. The transition to the next level for you, what was the biggest transition for you? For someone who was super successful in high school, what was the biggest transition? Did you have any of those shell shock moments where you're like, man, college is so much different. I got to be a student. I got to be an athlete. Or was it kind of easy for you?
No, it was incredibly difficult. And it's something that it's easy to relay that message now, because I'm able to, as I got older and matured and had more experiences and stuff, it's easier to look back on it and kind of dissect it. I think the main adjustment for any college kid or any kid transitioning from high school to college is you're kind of starting over in the experience portion of basketball. Like you go from having, a traditional route of having, 3, 4, 5 years in a high school program where by the time you're done, you're so familiar with what you're doing. And that's just from an understanding point, but you feel like you're well versed in what you're doing. And then you get to something brand new, and then you factor in you're living on your own, you're on a new campus, you're trying to manage your time maybe for the first time on your own. The basketball piece comes like third or fourth, and it's the hardest part. And so it's just, you kind of feel like you're treading water, but you feel like you're not doing a very good job of it. And so it was hard every day freshman year. And that's what I tell a lot of the kids I work with that are making that transition is I'm like, it's going to be really hard every day, but it gets easier every day as well. And so that's to me, the biggest adjustment piece is that you're starting over in learning, and you kind of don't know what you don't know, and you're going to figure it out on the fly.
Dude, I like that, man. I think as I look at these kids that I coach currently, and I'm glad you said that, because a lot of them are going to go on to college next year, and it might be a junior college for most of them. I coach the seniors, the unsigned seniors for us. So 17 and 18-year-old kids that they'll go on to college, and a lot of them played. I have 2 kids that played for the best team in the state of Idaho. It's called the Waihe High School, and they were the top dogs. They've won it multiple years now since they came into play. I think 2021 is their first year, and they've won it 3 out of the 4 years. And they're going to go into a junior college, and it's going to be a little different situation for them. I think they're used to this system, and they just don't know what's coming. So I appreciate you sharing that. But the cool thing is about your story, though, Anthony, as I was looking up your stuff, is like everyone, like you figure it out, right? You're going to have that transition, and you figure it out as you continue to go and go and go. You just have to kind of grind it out and feel for it and figure out the stuff. But I guess my next question would be is, what advice would you give to these kids that are going to the next level and they're going to go play college basketball or whatever, college athletics, whatever? What would you give them, knowing what you know now? Like, what would make it easier to transition over there? Is it time, time management, like prioritizing your time? Is it, understanding the demands physically and getting better prepared physically for what you're about to have to do? Like, what would be one piece of advice you have?
The main thing I would say is that it's okay to be in a vulnerable learning situation. Like, it's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to feel like you might not have everything under control right away. But I think that's the main thing that's hard, is you go from being, everybody that plays, in my case, like plays Big Ten, high major Division I basketball as a freshman, like everyone was really good wherever they're coming from, and most likely was the best player on their team or one of the best players on their team if they were on a really good team. And so it's okay to not be that anymore. And I think if you allow that thought process to kind of happen and allow yourself to fall into, I have stuff I need to learn, and there's going to be things I need to work on, and I'm not going to be the best player on the floor all the time. I can be, and hopefully I will be at some point, but right now that's probably not the reality. I'm not going to be the smartest kid in my lecture, or I'm not going to be like, you're going from being kind of a small fish in a big pond, or I'm sorry, a big fish in a small pond, to the opposite. And so I think just accepting that and allowing it to happen makes the transition a little bit easier. But again, it's so much easier said than done, especially looking back in hindsight, to just be like, it's okay to go home after practice and be like, wow, I've got some stuff I have to figure out and pretty quickly, instead of feeling like, no, there's no way that I don't know something.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I would like to hear this too. Out of your collegiate experience playing high-level collegiate basketball, do you have a favorite memory, whether it's a favorite coach, a favorite game, a favorite teammate, or something that you can reflect back on that you might share with some of the athletes you train?
I think looking back, like probably I mean, I had some really cool moments, especially really early on. Like my freshman year, I had a 25 point game on ESPN against West Virginia when they were coached by like Bob Huggins, and they had a really good team. And like some of that stuff is stuff that like you remember because it's just kind of the first like taste of success. I mean, I had a 20-point game my very first college game. I started my very first game as a freshman, scored 20 points in an exhibition game. Going into a game where you're like, I mean, you're terrified, and then all of a sudden you have success, and like so stuff like that is stuff that that you look back on, you're like, hey, that's pretty cool. But I think the coolest stuff to me was just like being a part of something that you kind of worked towards your whole life and then getting to kind of experience some of the stuff. Like you're going to, team events or you're out in public doing, whatever. And you're kind of like, wow, I'm actually part of, I'm wearing in my case, like I'm wearing all this Iowa Hawkeye stuff and we're at like this big team event and there's kids coming up to us and stuff. And it's just like kind of that first experience of like, hey, I made it. As much as you don't want to say like, I made it, but you're just kind of like, wow, it's, this actually happened. So I think those are some of the things that I'll always remember is like the first team event we did, or the first, first time you're recognized as being part of something.
That's so cool, man. I think it's awesome. I think it's okay to like it's healthy for people to like acknowledge that too, like it's okay to take a pause and be like, man, like we're here. We're doing this thing. And I think it's really healthy for especially like people that are competing at a very high level. It's a very small percentage of athletes that get to that next level. And so I think it's awesome if you can acknowledge it. Still you can still be humble and still continue to work hard, but it's okay to like acknowledge that you've been successful, you made it to a certain level. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking at your skill set, I would say, Anthony, one of your superpowers would be, understanding mindset and understanding like being a positive influence for athletes. And when Tiff reached out and was, she has the thing on the email about your whole entire bio and such, I started going down this rabbit hole of just like reading into stuff. And I'm a big believer in being a positive influence for athletes and throughout their journey. I think it's a massive thing. One of my superpowers is trying to instill confidence in kids who might not have it, and then helping them find the joy through their basketball journey. And so I'd like to ask you the same thing is like, how do you like talk about it, I guess, the importance of a positive influence for athletes along their journey?
Yeah, I was super fortunate. From the time I was 14, I had someone that poured a ton into me. In Chris Carr, he was someone that played for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he was my AAU coach and trainer, and just kind of all things mentor related. And I mean, just now being able to feel like I can be that for other people, because I know what it meant to me and how much it molded who I became and kind of the opportunities it afforded me and stuff. I think it's the most important piece of development is being able to follow something. Like, how can you, if you're aspiring to get better or to be something, to be able to have someone that you look up to that's maybe done the things you want to do or has some of the answers to the questions that you have, I think is the most invaluable thing along the journey. So if I can be that to people, I think I'd be remiss to not do my best and do my part in making sure that I can be a resource for someone that needs it.
Freaking awesome, man. Stuff that I'll take note of. And I would also ask the coaches around the valley that listen to this too, that I'm close to, take note of that as well. I think it's super important. It's incredible what one person can do if you just shine some positivity into somebody, and you show belief in someone, especially at a young age. A lot of those kids are going through a lot of struggles, I feel like, especially nowadays. There's a lot of pressures on kids these days that they're just external pressures. And so if you can find some sort of way to influence them in a positive way, be some sort of light, it's crazy how it can change the trajectory of their life, which you don't even realize, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of cool. So, Anthony, real quick on your professional journey, I don't want to just brush over that. I think it's important for the kids that are listening to this, especially the kids and the parents, to listen to this and understand that like you played at a professional level. So that's a very high level. Now, when you go to being paid to play the game of basketball versus, being in school, playing the game, you're paying to play essentially, unless you're on scholarship, right? Then you get to go, but you know what I mean? You're getting paid to play it now. The change, I guess, one of the things I talk to professional athletes all the time, and one of the biggest transitions I've heard, especially one of my buddies is playing overseas right now. He literally just posted, he goes, it's almost May and we're still playing basketball right now. Like it's his first professional season. And they started back at like the end of August, like September-ish. So, but his training camp or whatever it was like in August, and he was doing all of his contractual agreements and stuff. Now he said it's almost May and we're still playing. And that was a big transition for him. He's like, dude, you're playing a lot of basketball. Yeah, you're getting paid to do it, so you got to focus on it, but it's a lot. So you got to stay mentally locked in the entire time. I guess my question for you is talk about the transition there and just like, I guess, what's required from a mindset standpoint to be able to play, not just a physicality standpoint, but like the mindset to play professionally.
I think the main thing that I would say is how transactional everything is. Everything is so result based that you kind of lose. And I mean, it's funny to say now because I mean, you could make the argument and it's a whole separate conversation that college is now the same thing. But when I was playing in college, it was not. And so it went from like a relationship thing to now it's so, I mean, you get to the professional level and it's so result oriented and it's transactional. You're an investment. You're what they're paying for your performance. And so, bad games have a little bit more meaning than what they had in college. And there's a lot less forgiveness and there's an expectation of, hey, we're paying you, so we expect these results. And I think that's maybe something that is your first year overseas or maybe your first couple is something that you find out pretty quickly, but it's a weird adjustment because you kind of realize that like, there's nobody that I mean, there save for a few. There are, a few organizations and coaches and general managers and stuff that really look out for you, but nobody's really got your back. So it's kind of you. And if you're lucky enough to be over there with your family, but it's kind of you and your agent versus the world. And so I think that's a unique thing from basketball as you go from high school and college where you're like, you have great relationship with your coach and you're on a scholarship that's back then that was a 4-year agreement and you're not really worried about tomorrow. And when you get to the professional level, especially playing overseas, that can change pretty quickly if you're not performing. So that's a unique thing, but that's also part of life. That's how the corporate world works, or that's how, any industry works, is if you're not performing, you're probably not going to keep that job for very long.
Sure. And dude, that was like perfect because it was going to kind of segue into my next question because I'm sitting here taking notes. If anyone doesn't know, like I always take notes on my phone. Like I'll have my my notepad out when I'm talking. Right. So my notepad's open, then I'll shut the screen off. But if you guys are listening to the podcast, like if you're a podcast listener, which hopefully this is what you guys are, if you're listening to the show, I'd always recommend whatever device you have on your phone, Android, iPhone, whatever, take notes while you're listening. If you're probably listening on the device itself right now, just take notes of it because this is how I like my brain functions this way. So you're talking and I wrote down corporate sector is what I wrote right here. So my question for you is this, because outside of running my media business, I work a full-time job at this current moment. I'm in the marketing world. I'm the director of marketing at a big company. It's an RV company. But we have 22 dealerships across the country now. That's at the time of this recording. And, I'm struggling with stuff too. Like it is a results-based business. You have to stress the ups and downs, especially in a leadership position, right? And so when you're in a leadership position, I guess the buddy with your coworkers that you might have had before you were in a leadership position, it no longer exists because now you're reporting to the president of the company or the VP of your particular department. And there's no buddy. It is a results-based business, which in my opinion brings on some external pressures. There's some heavy weight that comes onto your shoulders because that's your paycheck on the line. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and you got to try to get your team to rally and you have to deal with those pressures. So like one way I'm like, I need to keep my job, but like, how do I continue to execute while I'm dealing with these pressures? I would ask you the same question. Maybe you can help those of us who are in the corporate world, those who are athletes who are dealing with the same thing. How do you develop the bulletproof mindset so to speak, to be able to handle the external pressures and still execute?
I think that's the unique piece, is that there's such high expectations of I mean, you're essentially labeled as an import. So you're someone that they're bringing over to whatever country you're playing in because they think that you can do something better than what someone over there can do. So they're importing you to come do a job. And the pressure is really high because, again, you're an investment and you're someone that they have put a value on of, hey, we're going to pay this person X amount of dollars because they do the job better than someone that we could get here. And it's hard from the beginning. I would be very curious in doing kind of like some market or some, field research or market research to see how many players that have played overseas haven't been cut at least one time from an organization, because it happens. I mean, myself, I had a pretty successful professional career, made pretty good money and played in a lot of places. I've been cut 3 or 4 times from different organizations just because of, performance, fit, record. Sometimes some things were out of my control. Like it happens. And so I think one way that you kind of create this feeling of like, I'm going to do the best job I can, but I can't control everything. And I think when guys are able to adapt that kind of mentality, I think the pressure weans a little bit, but it's still like, it's hard, and it's a hard gig. I would say it's maybe one of the hardest like industries, if you will, in the world, because a lot of it is result based and you can't control the results all the time. I've been cut when I was leading the league in scoring and assists, and we just weren't winning. And so actually that's happened multiple times. And so I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like at the end of the day, you're kind of, there's sometimes where you're just like, you shake their hand, tell them thanks for the opportunity, and you keep it pushing and you find your next opportunity. So.
No, I appreciate that. It's the honest, candid feedback. You know what I mean? If that's just how it is and you have to figure a way out of it. But it's cool that I appreciated you saying things that are outside of your control. That's a lot of, that's just life. There's a lot of times that things are out of your control. You could be doing everything on the X's and O's side of things that shows that, hey, you're winning. But unfortunately, if things like there's industry shifts here and there's a lot of things that happen in life and that are out of your control, and you just kind of have to accept it, and then I guess just pick it up and go when things happen. So right. As long as you have the skill set that's required, you can pick up and go to the next thing and keep grinding. It's easier said than done, though. I mean, I shouldn't say it's easier said than done, but it sounds easier in my opinion than it probably is. When you get cut, there's like an ego shot that you probably take, and you're like, man, it affects your paycheck, it affects your livelihood a little bit, and then you got to like figure out, like, am I really good enough? Like, am I really good enough to do this? Like, you start playing the imposter syndrome game. But that's why I have respect for people like you, Anthony. Is like, you played at a high level and you understand, like, you are good enough. Even if you get cut, you are good enough. Let's go find it somewhere else with a better fit, and you just keep rolling, which you've done. Now you're instilling that into the youth. As we look at your professional career, you played in a lot of places, a lot of different teammates. I guess what would be the biggest difference between basketball in America and that overseas to you?
I guess from the game perspective, like there's just a different level of ability, athleticism. I would say the understanding of the game is so much different over there, and it varies from where you play. I mean, I've played in Eastern Europe, and the style of play is so much different than it is in China. I've played Western Europe, and that style is different than America. And so it's just the way people see the game is different everywhere. The way people coach the game, the way they communicate the game, it's different. There's just different philosophies. I always like to say that, like, playing in Eastern Europe, I think they play basketball like it's soccer. I think they really value movement and cooperation within the team, and it's just a different viewpoint of the game than when I played. I spent half my career playing between China and Taiwan, and that is the most like give you the ball and just get out of your way basketball ever. And so I would just say the understanding of the game is so different no matter where you're at. And then you get back to America, and I think America does have a decent blend of both. Like, I think there is a really high understanding of the game. I mean, it was invented here. So there's a high level of understanding, but then you pair that with the athletic ability and just the overall skill and talent level here, which is why you see dominance internationally from the US. And nobody's catching up as much as people say, as much as they want to say other countries are catching us or whatever. Every other country that's come close, it's been flash in the pan. Like Spain having a really good group, now they don't. It's not like they caught up. They had a really good group of guys that, I mean, came over here and played. And so I just think that the game over here is that it's such a high level of game, but then when you go over there, it's broken down. You play some places that are more tactical, some places that have better athletes, some places that just see the game differently, and you make the adjustment based on where you're at. But it's really cool when you get to play for a long time and play in a bunch of different places to be able to kind of mold your own perspective of the game just based on the different places that you played.
See, that's what I was thinking would be pretty cool. Like, if I was trying to imagine being in your position of, like, you're an American basketball player, you're here playing the best basketball probably in the entire world, right? But then you get to be part of it, not just see it, but you get to be part of it in all different places. And it's cool that you have such a unique perspective that the majority of the world doesn't get to see. The majority of basketball players don't get to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's awesome. That's pretty cool. I'm sure that shines through as you're a trainer and you're helping these kids develop as well. So, which is what we'll get into is, the next part of like the next facet of your life and your career from the business standpoint, right? I always talk about this, Anthony. I think that I hate the discussion of how, like, people will say, "Oh, these athletes are just dumb jocks." That was the comment that was made when I was a little kid all the time. Athletes are dumb jocks. I disagree with that. I think that there are I think a lot of athletes learn a lot of life skills, like you're talking about right here, that you can take into the business world if you utilize them. And they make great employees. They make great leaders. They make a lot. They're great if they utilize the skills they learn through sport. Now, business side of things, what motivated you to start Hoop Habits? And let's start talking about Hoop Habits and what it's all about. Talk to us about the mission of Hoop Habits and, like, getting into the business side of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I worked with a lot of kids, more high level kids, when I was still playing. Like, I would come home in the summers and, connections I had, I was coaching AAU, and helping run a program. So I think the connections I had just with the parents and stuff, and them being like, "Hey, do you have time to work with my kid? Since you're home for a few months and stuff." And so, kind of started to build a little bit of a client base in just training. It's never something that I thought I would be doing. It was never like a goal or anything that I was, kind of focused on starting when I got done playing. But I saw an opportunity when I was done playing. I was still coaching and still working with players. And so to me, it was kind of like a synergistic opportunity to put those two things together. Was able to come into a space, get my own training facility. And, that's half the battle when you're doing anything basketball related, is trying to find the space to do it. And so being able to, to purchase my own facility that, I have access to and can get people in whenever I need to and stuff, just kind of created this business model of being able to run a training business. And, wanted to do something that, like you said, I mean, being able to share my perspective and make it something that's unique to me and to my experiences, and be able to kind of cultivate and help shape, a basketball culture in a way that I believe in and that I felt good about. And so for me now, being able to do that, and we're a year in, and kind of seeing the impact that I've had in the basketball world here, has been really cool to see. It's been a great journey. And it's, if you would have told me, when we were starting this a year ago, that this is where we'd be at, I wouldn't have believed you. But, I'm very grateful for the people that believe in me and have allowed me to work with their kids and teams. And, it's just kind of it's grown and it continues to grow, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
No, that's super cool, man. When I was looking at the facility too, like one of the issues we run into here in Idaho, Anthony, is like the space. There's like no space. Like there's a couple facilities, but then yet like they have their main people, whether it's their owners or the clubs that started them, so they get to utilize them all the time. There's like nowhere to go, right? Unless you build your own. And that's what a lot of these people that are moving here are doing when they build their homes, is they're building a shop with a half court or a full court basketball court if they have the money for it, but not everybody has money for it. So it's like there's no space. So like I was looking at your guys' facility. It's freaking dope, dude. It's it looks cool. Like it's like one that I would want to go to. Like it's not no offense to the YMCA, but it's not like, and there's nothing wrong with YMCA stuff, but you kind of want something that like looks cool and feels cool. It's the whole concept: look good, feel good, play good kind of thing. It looks pretty dope. I have a question from a business standpoint. When you're getting into there and you're trying to get this thing whole set up, and you need to have partners that kind of partner in with you and get it. Like, what was the hardest thing for you to get in the business side of things to get this thing opened up? Because I'm sure you have the basketball knowledge. You know you can train kids. You know you could probably fill up the slots to get people in there and pay the bills and stuff. But as far as like the other little components, getting the court set up, you got to get a court built. You got to get all these things. You got to make sure it passes code. You got to make sure you got the cryotherapy, which I saw in there. Like there's different things. I guess what was the biggest transition and the biggest hurdle for you?
The really nice thing for me was I was pretty far down the rabbit hole of, we found a space. We were going to build out, kind of build out my own space. And then this place came available. It was already built. And so
oh, wow.
It was kind of a turnkey operation. Obviously, we took a little bit of time, about 6 weeks, to kind of renovate it and kind of make it our own. But no, having the build out made life way easier because there wasn't as long of a transition period. There wasn't like I wasn't building a space, so I didn't have to wait that amount of time. I would say the hardest part is just you purchase something and you open it and you're just kind of like, all right, we're here now. And I think it's like that with a restaurant or with any type of commercial space that you build out, and that's whether you're selling, whether it's a boutique that you're selling stuff in or a hair salon, whatever it is, like it's the you open it and it's day one and you're kind of like, all right, like we're here, we're open. And so you have the people that you work with and the people that and stuff, but that's not going to pay the bills and that's not going to cover the overhead and stuff. So I think we had a pretty successful marketing campaign, and I think just allocating some resources to marketing was really helpful. I think our social media has been incredibly beneficial for us. But yeah, I would just say like the biggest adjustment is just making sure that you're known and that people know you're open and know what you do and where you're located. And I think once we started to do that and more people started to come check it out, and then word of mouth and referrals and stuff, I think that's been the biggest thing for us. But it was a little bit of a scary endeavor, because you open up and you're just like, what if nobody shows up? Or what if I only have 10 people that train at the gym? Like, what do we do? And so it was kind of a leap of faith, but ultimately it ended up working out.
No, I love that. That's one of those things, I guess, as a business owner, it's a risk, man. You build it and then you got to fill that funnel. I used to work for a guy named Russell Brunson, an entrepreneur guy, and worked for him for 6.5 years. And we used to build sales funnels and teach entrepreneurs and business owners how to drive leads for their business, and that's what I did for a long time. And that's a big thing. You build the website, you build the facility, you build whatever. How do you fill that now? Like, how do you get traffic to that place? And there's an art to that as well through marketing. But it's a scary thing. It's really cool though. If you go to your website, I want people to go to your website and check it out. So I'm going to put the link here, obviously, to hoophabits.com. But would you mind just sharing a little bit about what you guys offer at the facility? I mean, you've talked about AAU program, but I want them to understand, like, you have memberships that people can pay, and there's a shooting machine, which is one of the things that I love as a coach and as a trainer and as a shooter myself. Like if I had access to one of those, which I would have, like, that would be amazing. I could go and get some shots up. So talk to us about what you guys have available at the facility.
So our main focus is individual and small group training. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we do. our small groups are capped at 10 athletes at a time. We feel like that's kind of the sweet spot for being able to, control the variables and being able to do the things that we want to do with our groups. Our one-on-one training has been really popular as well. Just being able to get in one-to-one with a kid and work with them on whatever they want. Obviously we're very communicative with parents and kids and coaches and whoever, influences kind of the direction they want to go. And so that's kind of the base of what we do. And then from that, so many things have kind of launched. Like you said, we have the shooting machine rentals. We've launched a basketball academy that is a 12-month program that we work year round with athletes on all things. It's skills training, it's sports performance, it's nutrition, it's recovery, it's sports mindset training. And so we work super closely with those athletes in all those aspects in kind of a year of just focused development. And then we launched the AAU program kind of as a byproduct of, having all these athletes in the gym that we're working with on development, and then being like, hey, we want to take this a step further and be able to provide, coaching in-game and in-game experiences for them and stuff. And so all of this stuff kind of stemmed from just the individual and small group training. From all of that, and then we do the sports performance piece here in-house. We have weights, we have turf space. So we're able to do the sports performance stuff. We're able to do a lot of recovery stuff on site with, we have a localized cryo machine. We have an infrared sauna. We have Normatex. We have hypervolts. So we have all the things that basically that one would need in order to develop into a complete, well-rounded athlete, not only basketball player.
Dude, that's so cool. Like, I'm geeking out about it, man. Like, I wish I had access to that when I was younger. I think everybody would probably say that are our age, but
Yep.
You guys are providing that. And Anthony, I want athletes to know too, the whole nutrition recovery aspect too, that you guys provide during like the academy concept, like with all of that. Would you mind sharing, like, what was the importance of recovery and nutrition as a part of that? I guess it kind of goes hand in hand, but they're, separate. The importance of that for athletes, and like I'm trying to get that into the kids. We're traveling in Salt Lake City, dude, and we're eating Raising Cane's chicken wings and stuff, and then the kids are drinking their Diet Cokes and they're eating Cheetos the night before and going to sleep at 2 a.m. and we got an 8 a.m. game. Like, I mean, they're gonna get away with it because they're 17 years old to 18 years old for a minute, but it'll catch up to them, and I don't know how else to tell them that. So can you maybe share some experiences of like your experience? How does nutrition and recovery play a role in being able to compete at a high level?
It's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. And I joke about it and it kind of ages me a little bit, but like when we were playing in high school and college, it was like eating, 2 pounds of pasta the night before, and carb loading was the move. And it was like, that gets you ready for a big game. And we come to find out that's really not great for you or for anything that you're doing performance wise. And so it's just one of those things that it's like providing the educational component and providing information is the best thing that we can do. And, for our academy athletes, they have weekly nutrition check-ins with our nutritionist, and they kind of set a goal. They're young, they're high school kids. And even we have a few that are even, junior high kids. And so we set realistic and what I would say are like healthy goals. We're not focused on, body transformation or anything, but it's just, hitting a protein intake goal or hydration, just stuff like that. So just providing as much nutritional education as possible, and then doing the same for the recovery piece, like explaining how important and how crucial mobility and flexibility are. Talking about, taking care of your body, pre-workout, post-workout, just things that you might not really understand the importance or the effects. But once you do understand those things and kind of seeing how it does play into your performance, I think once you learn that, it's really hard to go back, because you're not going to say, hey, I want to choose to feel poorly. So once you know how those things can affect you, and also how they can boost your performance, and also, I mean, ultimately help you be a better version of yourself. I think if we can provide that education, it's incredible the lasting effect that it can have on athletes.
Thank you for sharing that. I interviewed a guy named Trevor Moawad who passed away not too long ago, about a year or two ago, but he was Russell Wilson's mental consultant, and he had a book called "It Takes What It Takes." And then I had him on the podcast to share some stuff about just mental training. And one of the things he was talking about was like a neutral mindset. He tries to teach athletes on the importance of a neutral mindset. And he gave an example of Fred Taylor, and I think he kind of talked about the importance of his recovery and stuff. They kept, like, he was a Jaguars running back. He kept getting hurt year after year. He's coming up on a contract year. And one thing that Trevor shared in the book and then on my podcast as well was that they made sure they started having him come in at like 6 a.m. for his, to get ready for practice, to come to see the doctor and get ready for, practice. And what they realized was he stopped having hamstring injuries when he started coming in at 6 a.m. And the reason for that is it kind of had a trickle down effect. And he talked about, like, he stopped going out late at night, so he wasn't drinking alcohol. Instead, he was actually getting adequate amount of sleep, and he was drinking water naturally because he was so tired of, like, being tired when he would wake up so early. So they naturally just kind of made it earlier so that he would kind of just figure it out himself of, like, hey, if I want to get enough sleep, I can't go out tonight. Well, if I'm not going out tonight, I'm not drinking alcohol, so I'm not so dehydrated. And all of a sudden, his injuries started, going away. It wasn't so prone to the hamstring injuries. And it's just kind of interesting to hear that even a professional athlete like that had made it to the NFL, the hydration piece, the recovery piece, the sleep, those little things, he wasn't on point with, but they figured it out. They had to get it through to him. And you mentioned, like, you don't know what you don't know, but it's awesome that you guys are sharing the educational piece. You're sharing that so that these athletes can't claim ignorance anymore. They actually get to see, like, okay, this is what's important.
Right.
On that topic, I have one last question for you in regards to what you guys provide, because I'm super intrigued by that academy piece of it all with nutrition recovery and everything. It's the mindset, it's the mindset training, right? The sports psychology, so to speak, sports mindset training. Anthony, what do you teach these kids on the mindset component? Because that's another thing. They all think it's this woo-woo motivational stuff, and they don't understand truly, not a ton of them understand the importance of the mindset training. So I guess, what do you guys provide them in those sessions?
I think the most important thing that gets provided is it's almost like a deconstruction of the different components of, like, our mental makeup. And so it's talking about and kind of taking certain pieces and just focusing on one thing. And so if you're someone that suffers from performance anxiety, you get nervous. Why do you get nervous? What are you nervous about? Instead of just saying, like, hey, it's easy for people to sit and be like, hey, if you just meditate for 10 minutes before the game, you're going to go out there and you're going to be super calm, and then you're going to play really well. But it's like, where does the anxiety stem from? Where's the anxiousness coming from? And if you're able to pinpoint stuff, then you're able to maybe find a solution for that thing. And it's little stuff that I think it's unique to everybody, because it can be a broad topic, like, performance anxiety, or if you want to even take it a step further and talk about, people that have mental blocks at the free throw line. How can someone shoot 45% from three and 60% from the free throw line? Well, there's something going on when you step up to the free throw line that's causing you to not shoot the ball as well as you do from 10 feet back. And so if you're able to deconstruct things and kind of pinpoint and focus on, specific things instead of looking at things as a broad topic, I think that's one of the ways that we've found success. And then also just talking about, giving people a platform to be vulnerable and also talk about anything that they might not understand, or things that they aren't sure about. I think that's kind of been the success of the sports mindset training, and less of providing people solutions that might or might not work for everybody. I think it's allowing people to almost find their own solutions within these broad topics that I think everybody suffers from. Because I think when you talk about sports mindset training, it ultimately turns into visualization, meditation, all these things that it's like, well, if you don't really know how or what, then it's not necessarily going to hit home the way that it potentially could if you're able to kind of work through certain scenarios or certain issues with people. So that's kind of it with the sports mindset training is again, like the educational piece and less of trying to provide just a one-stop shop solution for things that, people have struggled with widely for a really long time. I don't think anybody has the solution yet, but we can maybe try to find something that works for you specifically.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love it. So if somebody wants to take advantage of your guys' services, they want to be able to come over and see you, they want to contact you. I mean, we've got hoophabits.com that I have in the link in the description. Is there any other way you want them to contact you? Is it just go to the website? Is there a phone number on there like that they can call you guys? I guess what's the best way to get a hold of you guys if they want to take advantage?
Our website has everything that you would need,
Okay.
from email to phone. All of our social media handles are on there. But if you follow us on Instagram at Hoop Habits Training, if you are on X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it now, it's at Hoop Habits MN. But we try to provide as much information as possible on our social media. But yeah, our website is kind of one-stop shop for us. We also have our AAU website, is hoophabitselite.com. That provides all information about our AAU program, about the things that we do there that are unique to us. And so we try to be as informative as possible, but also just by reaching out, whether you email us, I think info@hoophabits.com, or calling our phone number and getting in touch with somebody here. We're open to talking. We talk to people that don't train here. Like we provide as much information as we can. We don't gatekeep over here. And so, the mission and my ultimate goal is to just be able to change, and to positively impact the basketball culture, whether it's locally, nationally, whatever value I can provide, I'm here to do that.
I freaking love it, man. This is super cool. I'm going to have that link here, like I said, in the description. You guys have probably already seen it if you're listening to the show. We'll put the social media profiles down here too for you guys to follow as well, straight from the description of the podcast. But can't let you off the hook right now, Anthony. The last question I got for you, man, I ask everybody this regarding their respective sport. What's the biggest life lesson that basketball has taught you?
The biggest life lesson that basketball has taught me is that no matter what you're trying to do, you need to do things like, if you're going to set a goal, like you need to be taking steps every single day that are conducive to reaching that goal. And it doesn't have to be huge leaps and bounds to get there, but everything that you do should be conducive to that goal, because ultimately working towards something is, to me, that's what life's about, is having a goal, having a mission, having something that you're passionate about and being able to pour into that. And so for me, that was basketball, and it took me some time to understand that. But once I did, kind of, it molded who I was, and it allowed me to kind of have direction. Like I said, I made that change in 6th grade, of specializing in a sport, and everything I did from that point on was I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to play Division I basketball. I knew I wanted to be a professional. And I'm not saying that everything I did all day, every day was directed towards that, but I made sure that I was taking steps towards that all the time. And some of those decisions were hard. I open enrolled to a bigger high school, that had a better basketball program and a tradition of being a basketball powerhouse. And so, making small sacrifices or huge sacrifices, everything I did was a step towards my goal, and it allowed me to reach that. And so I'm very, very passionate, in telling people that, set a goal, but make sure that you're working towards that, because goals don't just happen. It's always going to be something that you've put the work in, and you've allowed yourself to be in position to accomplish.
Thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate that. I hope everybody enjoyed this and they take note of a lot of things, but especially what you just said right there regarding the goals. I appreciate that, Anthony. I know you got a lot going on. You're running this business, and you took the time to be on the podcast. So I truly appreciate your time. And I hope everybody who's listening appreciated your time as well. Hope you guys all learned something. So like I always say, appreciate your time. Make sure to hit that follow button, because we'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.